with another episode of how to make a car in rFactor, more notably the DeltaWing, or such a type of car. After lots of videos we did the tires and a couple of other things, and last time I said, well, what are we going to do, the aero or the suspension? Well, it makes sense to do the suspension after the aero, because things like downforce act on the suspension, so we better fix the downforce and then do the suspension. This spreadsheet here has all the rFactor equations for all the downforce bits and pieces in there, and let's see where we get. Currently it's in streetcar mode, which I will keep for just a little while. I don't think downforce is that adjustable on the real car. No, I don't know. Also you say, well, there is a front wing and a rear wing. The car doesn't have those things, but these are just aero points somewhere. They don't have to be a wing of some sort. And the front wing and the rear wing can be quite useful to put on a car even that has strictly no wings. Any car will have its own aero forces, and they're just convenient ways to add some forces. Okay, I'll give the front wing a few settings and the rear wing a few settings as well. I'm gonna make the default setting halfway through. Yes, -1, is that a good idea? Well, we already decided at the tires that the downforce is 1.43 as the coefficient, so that's good to know. So 1.43, that's something to check against. Yeah, right. So this is the average downforce, and this is of the entire ride height map, and this is what we have, or what we need basically. Ride height sensitivity is part of it, done with a few things, mainly the front wing and the diffuser. So the front wing, even though we don't have any, it can make sense to place the front wing some distance in front of the front axle and then give it a lift height and a maximum height that is all fine-ish. What was the ride height? Did it already? Good question. What is the ride height? I think they mentioned the ride height. DeltaWing. Instantly to the right page. The car. Tell me about the car. Blah 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 blah. Or not. Well, that doesn't help. Oh, I read something about ride height somewhere. Where was that, and what was the number? Because I thought it was like quite a reasonable ride height, not really at the ground or anything. Yeah. Blind. Minimum ground clearance 30 mil on the front and 60 on the rear. So that's the minimum ground clearance. Doesn't really tell us if that's static with the car just sitting in the pits. Seems fair to assume that perhaps, or at speed. Let's assume it's just the car sitting still. Minimum 30 and 60, so let's use 35 and 65 or 35 and 70 as the starting point, which I have to know a bit because of the aero being ride height sensitive, so I have to know something about the ride heights and enter those ride heights here. Minimum, non-adjustable. Okay. So the design ride height is just about 3.5, and the maximum ride height is where the calculations end. It's probably fine. Make it a bit higher. Alright, I have the wing up 2 centimeters, so then the design height is that. Alright, diffuser, going to use that to add some general sensitivity, ride height sensitivity. This is usually a negative number, usually quite a positive number. Alright, sorry, no, that's a bit much. Ooh, pretty shapes. Okay, currently my table, my front ride height goes from 0 to 35, but 35 is where we start. So let's start at a higher value. Now 35 is in the middle. This makes more sense. This puts our ride heights, the red ones here, this is the default setup of the car, and it will get lower as we gain speed. So now this is automatic. Making this and this and this one sort of the ride heights where we start. Okay. Well, I think the total downforce has to be 1.43, and currently where we are at 2, so now the settings are too extreme. But now we're no longer in a street car. Better use my other race car tables, which make a bit more sense to me. Here we have the total downforce, the diffuser downforce, the front balance and the drag. Currently the drag is not yet sensitive. Yes, well, this is something. Drag probably increases a bit when the ride height or the rake changes. But probably not that much. Something like that. The final drag is just about the same, and now it's somewhat sensitive to ride height. Okay. Balance is good. I don't want to change the resolution here, and we are seeing that it is not drawing or calculating it to a high enough ride height. Now it will. Yes, that makes more sense. Alright, diffuser has a front height. Yeah, this looks like something. The body max height. Let's just put these slightly above the values that we are plotting. Okay, now we have some sort of a look going here. How about the shades here? Well, first things first, the balance of the aero, which I already mentioned somewhere. They said 76% of the aero acts on the rear of the car, which will be ride height sensitive, so that's probably at a point in the aero map, which I do not know where. If they start at 35 mils front and 70 mils rear, I would assume that they have this balance of 76% at a slightly lower ride height. So let's take 25 and 50. Make that green as well. So there we need 76%. In other words, currently the front aero, sorry, this is the front percent, so we need 24% here. So currently we have too much aero on the front. Can change the position of things, and it's also interesting to look at this currently not that well shaded chart. Axis, vertical axis, more. Does this matter? So we are going, well, it will change anyway. It's currently all screwed up. Close. Don't do that. We need more rear aero. We could just move stuff to the back. Currently we have a rear wing which acts at the rear axle. Let's make it act far further back. See that already moves it there. I don't want to put the front wing further behind because I like the pitch sensitivity that a far in front wing provides. I could move the diffuser more rearwards, which would bring it nearer, but this also changes the shape of the balance chart, which I don't really want. I kinda like sort of a shape like this, which is more predictable. Something like that perhaps. So still we have too much aero. Well, that means more rear downforce and less on the front. Getting there, and now the shape is bending a bit, so I can probably return to the other one. Okay, we are getting nearer. 24%, and currently we are at about 28. So now I am at 23 here at the regular ride height and 25 there. That is possibly okay. Nobody really knows. But it's fair starting point. Remember, I have adjustable wings, so I can change the settings a bit. And these are at wing setting 3 and 3. Now you can see my average downforce is 1.47, and we said, well, we kind of need 1.43, so this is fairly close. And if I change the wing setting, it will be a bit less, and I can go up to 11 settings, and then it will be, oops, too much, naturally, but it gives me an adjustability of a bit too much, I would say. So this is the setting, the first setting, so the lowest wing setting, I get 1.28. Is that fair enough? Probably. But I'd like that to be like 1.2, so a bit less. And I also like this balance to be just about correct. So that means I have to adjust the minimum. So now I have 1.2 with a balance that is a bit too far rearward. So that means a bit more front and a bit less rear. Already that did the trick ish, so that's a reasonable starting point. And then at setting 11, see, at the first setting I was at 1.2, so perhaps at 11 I want to be at 1.6 or 1.7. That's a bit too much. So that's, if I want to be at 1.7, I have to take 0.3-ish off, because it's now at about 2. So 0.3 is 15, somewhere like that, and then 0.15 from the rear. It's not too bad, but again I have too much aero on the rear, which means I have to add something on the front. 0.02, and then remove that from the back. Remove a bit more. Ish, 24% there. And now at wing setting 1 there is 24 something as well. What have I completely disregarded at the moment? The drag from increasing the wing setting. Now normally if you have regular wings, the higher the setting, the steeper the wing, the more drag it will produce. But with this car I have no idea if the downforce in real life is actually that much adjustable. Probably not a huge amount, I don't know. Perhaps they can do some stuff under the car. But it's unlikely to have a huge effect on the drag, I would say. Certainly for what I'm trying to achieve is just having a adjustable amount of downforce for tweaking and just looking at it. But the drag is more or less given and known, so I'll have magic wings that aren't really wings, but just adjustable aero, giving me a nice range. And now I think setting 6 is a bit too high. Setting 5. So setting 5 gives me something reasonable for the expected 1.43, and I get 1.44. A bit more because it's the average. So, meh. You can see that at very low ride heights. This is the little bulb where the downforce is greatest. So this is the rear ride height, and this is the front ride height. Do I want to change the shape of this general downforce? Or perhaps, you know, without any data, it's really hard to predict. Does the downforce keep increasing when the ride heights are lowered? Very difficult to say. But now it keeps growing until a very low ride height, and is still quite alright at reasonable rear ride heights. So perhaps I want to stall a bit more. Something like that perhaps, but typically the sensitivity is more with the front ride height and less with the rear ride height. So now you have these 100% here, 99, 97, so this is kind of the area where you want to be for maximum downforce. See, now I've, because of the stalling, I've now created a more of a zone here, which is slightly larger. I would like to have this a bit more downforce at higher rear ride heights, because you may run in this zone, and it's hard to say. This isn't bad or anything, but perhaps I want at 6 centimeters rear ride height, I still want a bit more downforce, which you can do. Something like this is looking a lot nicer now. So I have a zone basically here where the downforce is quite well. Has this screwed up my balance? Well, still 24%, which is what we have to have. And at the lowest setting it's 25, so it's just about the same. At the highest setting it's 24, so that's about right. And setting 5 is my sort of starting point, which is close to the 1.43. So my default wings will be 5 and 5. Alright, that's a form of aero done here. Yaw is going to be of some importance. At these ride heights at wing settings 5 and 5. What does my downforce do and my drag when I go sideways? Well, first of all, this axis is screwed up because it's not even showing. There it is. So what do we want to happen with the downforce as yaw starts? Well, you could make it lose a lot of downforce, or what does the balance do? Hard to say. With winged cars, usually if yaw increases, then the balance, the aero balance, moves forward, because the front wing still encounters reasonable airflow, I would assume, and the rear wing probably gets a bit more messed up air. It's not even necessarily always true, but now you can see as yaw increases from 0 to 10 to 15, this green line is the aero balance moves toward a more front value. Do I want that? Is that even true? I've got absolutely no idea. But you gotta use something anyway. And as a percentage, my lateral drag is a bit screwed up. Where is the body? That is all quite alright. But as you can see, my drag when I go forward is 100%, and then when I go 90 degrees sideways it's 4.5 times more. Well, I would expect the drag to be more when you look at the car from the side, but perhaps this is a bit extreme. So something like this is more what you would expect. And this one here is a torque that is caused by and then when it's positive it's sort of an oversteer torque, and when it's negative it's an understeer torque. Now if you look at the side of the car, it has the fin at the back, so if anything the drag that applies from the side is more applying towards the rear end of the car. So there's more area in this part than there is at the front. So if you look at where is the center of drag from the side, well, it's probably somewhere near the center of gravity even. So let's do that, which means that this should be about 0, because this is the torque around the center of gravity caused by the lateral drag, which means I have to mix the lateral drag between the rear wing, the imaginary rear wing, which is somewhere behind the rear axle. See, now it's already sort of going towards 0. Yes, slightly negative. Now it's pretty much 0, so that's fine. So we have now put the lateral drag center somewhere at the center of gravity, so there's no torque from that, which is all an assumption, of course. Overall downforce drops quite quickly, so at 20 degrees yaw there's just over 50 something, 60 something percent downforce left. Is that fine? Nobody knows. And I've made the front wing this shape here that starts and then grows, is basically that the first few degrees of yaw don't change the front downforce, but they do lose rear downforce in this case. So if I make this a bit more like that, you will get something like that. So now the balance is fairly stable for the first bit of yaw, a bit towards the front, so perhaps a bit more oversteer for that. Downforce drops fairly quickly, but not hugely quickly. There's lateral drag, so when I'm in a 90 degree sideways slide, my drag is about 2.5 times versus going straight forward. Alright, I've made some wing settings, which of course it may not have, but so just that I can adjust the handling and the balance a bit when I'm testing the car for the first time. Is there anything else we have to do with aero? There is something else. This is no longer used, but the other ones, when you go backwards, is there a lift when you go backwards? You know, once you go backwards at sufficient speed to generate lots of lift or drag, then the magnitude of these values isn't your biggest problem. You're going to have a pretty significant crash. Lift and drag when jumping and all that, that's not too important. Alright, so this is double checking. We have a ride height sensitivity here, so at certain front ride height of 45 mils and a front ride height of 45 mils and a rear ride height of 30 mils, you can see that I have 76% of the maximum downforce, and you can see sort of this shape of the map. So at any front ride height and any rear ride height you can see what sort of downforce there is. I like this balance change here. So as the rear ride height grows, the balance of the aero moves forward, and let's just say that it's probably alright. So that's the aero done. Thanks for watching this. With now the aero done, we know the forces and all that stuff, and we can do the suspension next time. There are two parts of the suspension: the geometry and also the springs, dampers, ride height, bump rubbers, that sort of stuff. Thanks again, and see you another time. Bye bye.